Is AEW in 2025 better than AEW in 2021? Hell no. AEW in 2021 was a very special time in wrestling. That was literally the peak of my AEW fandom. And no, it's not just for the CM Punk return, the debuts of Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson all at the same time. It was more than that. Of course, we had the Chris Jericho MJF feud, Malachi Black suited Cody Rhodes, them going to Arthur Ashe Stadium, All Out 2021, arguably one of the best pay-per-views of all time, Kenny Omega's run as the belt collector, not to mention Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson at Arthur Ashe Stadium. That was some GOAT shit right there. And since then, AEW has not, I repeat, has not reached the peak of 2021. Then we got to 2022 where the crack started to show and ultimately drama blew up in the face of Tony Khan. 2023 came along and we had some bright spots, but the crack started to show even more, ultimately leading to more controversy, which led to the departure of CM Punk. 2024 came along and don't even get me started on 2024. 2024 was a complete shit show in AEW. We had some bright spots. I'm talking about you, Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay, arguably one of the best matches in AEW's history. But if you are a promotion that is all butthurt about somebody conducting an interview talking about his experience in your promotion, and you retaliate by showing the footage of his altercation with another wrestler to try to get back at him, only for it to backfire, you got a problem. Next thing you know, you send a wrestler to conduct a Raw speech acting like nothing happened. AEW in 2024, folks. But I will say, 2025 has a lot going for it for AEW. I see a lot of people speaking very highly of AEW, and myself included. But let's get this straight. AEW in 2025 is not better than AEW in 2021 or the years prior to 2021. Those first 4 years of AEW were a special time in wrestling. And it's a special time in wrestling that you just cannot repeat. We all just gotta move on with our lives. But we are gonna be talking about AEW and the man at the helm, Tony Khan, in this video. What's up? I'm yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, and this is my reason as to why AEW in 2025 is not better than AEW in 2021. Before we get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the Wrestle Havoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the friggin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Okay, let's talk about some AEW. Now, before I get into all my rambling, I'm gonna say this right here and right now. Just because I give my opinion on something doesn't mean I hate the particular thing I am talking about. And I'm saying this because I know how butthurt the AEW fan base tends to be. They're arguably the worst fan base in all of pro wrestling. And that's saying something. I'm a fan of AEW. I've been a fan of them since even before AEW was a thing, when they first announced the company back in January 1st of 2019. I was a fan of Cody Rhodes. I was a fan of the Bucks. I was a fan of Kenny Omega. And I still am. Hell, I feel like I'm the only Young Bucks fan here. I'm a big fan of the Young Bucks. I love AEW. All of the things that I'm about to say in this video are out of love. And the majority of the things I'm going to talk about in this video is essentially going to be me calling out the stupidity of the AEW audience. But I'm going to say a lot of good in this video as well, because there's a lot of good to be said about AEW in 2025. All right, first off, the discussion about AEW in 2025 being better than AEW in 2021. It's a topic that is being floated around by a lot of people in the IWC. If you have a fan base that constantly tweets, "We are so back," you clearly left a couple of years ago. And if you're one of those people that tweet, "We're so back" all the time, you are the problem, because you're one of the people that are in denial about AEW and the current direction that the promotion is at, especially for the past couple of years. But what are my thoughts on AEW as a product right now? I think AEW as a product right now, even though there's still issues going on with the product, trust me, it's not a perfect show. I actually enjoy Dynamite nowadays. I barely enjoyed Dynamite for the majority of 2024. 2024 was by far the least interested I was in the AEW product. And I know a lot of people tuned out of the product as soon as CM Punk got fired. From the moment CM Punk got fired, the audience dipped, the attendance dipped. Now, granted, they were starting to experience all those issues even before the firing of CM Punk. There was a lot of backstage drama, all that shit. But one of the things that I've noticed about AEW in 2025 is Tony Khan and his approach. And this is actually a good thing. Look, I'm a big fan of Tony Khan. If there's anything good I can say about Tony Khan, especially now in 2025, is that he has improved his PR game. Because if you listen to the interviews of Tony Khan during AEW's peak, you can tell he was very excited about what he was doing. And you cannot blame him for it, because without Tony Khan and his family, AEW wouldn't exist. And I'm forever grateful about that. I feel like a lot of people tend to take Tony Khan for granted. And look, I've said my fair share about Tony Khan and his direction, but by no means I'm going to discredit the work that he has done. Because think about this, Tony Khan didn't have to work the rest of his life. For all we know, he could have just been sitting in a yacht doing nothing and essentially having an unlimited bank account. But the fact that this guy realized the potential of having another wrestling promotion in the United States around on a national level was genius on his end. And the fact that he started at AEW and provided provided a lot of jobs for a lot of people is a good thing, man. And I'll always applaud him for that, because not a lot of billionaires would do that. And the fact that Tony Khan did that was awesome. But of course, Tony Khan, as you guys all know, is a big wrestling fan, especially a big ECW fan. And throughout the peak years of 2021, 2022, especially 2022, we saw the craziness of Tony Khan. You guys remember the Forbidden Door promos with Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone, where Tony Khan called himself the Forbidden Door? I'm telling you guys, that was some funny shit. But then, of course, on the night where CM Punk became the AEW World Champion, Tony Khan went on a rampage, no pun intended, on Eric Bischoff, and he constantly pointed at CM Punk saying, "This fucking guy, this fucking guy,
this fucking guy."
Meanwhile, you had CM Punk right next to him thinking, dude, what did I get myself into? Then fast forward a couple months later, we had Brawl Out and the whole CM Punk media scrum incident. Dude, comparing those two press conferences are like night and day. Who could forget Tony Khan and his Twitter tirades? Remember back in 2023 when NXT went head-to-head against Dynamite on that Tuesday night, and Tony Khan just went scorched earth on Twitter to the point where he got cooked? Dude, we lived in crazy times back then. Why am I saying back then? It was only like 2 years ago. But my point being, with AEW experiencing this down period, I feel like it humbled Tony Khan a little bit, and that is a good thing. And yes, that is the case. They are counter-programming AEW with 3 different shows. They have an NXT show that's going head-to-head against All In, which, by the way, even though it's taking place in the US, the show is going to start at 3 p.m. in the East Coast. They moved that show up because they were afraid that they were going to go head-to-head with Saturday night's main event. But then they ran into going head-to-head with NXT's Great American Bash. Now, I'm going to ask you this right here and right now. You, the pro wrestling consumer, are you going to be watching a stadium show in AEW All In, or are you going to be watching NXT Great American Bash? I guarantee you, you're not going to be watching Great American Bash. Who the fuck is going to be watching that shit? I mean, you're going to be watching that over Omega versus Okada. You're going to be watching that over Hangman Page versus John Moxley. You're going to be watching that over Tony Storm versus Mercedes Moné. Give me a break. But also, they have the Evolution show happening the next night, which, by the way, WWE Evolution has been built very poorly, but that's another video for another time. AEW is WWE's target. They literally put 3 shows going up against their biggest show of the year. Now, if this were 2023, Tony Khan would have responded in a very crazy manner on social media, ultimately falling for the bait and looking bad in the process. But nowadays, Tony Khan is taking it in a much more professional capacity. In a recent interview, Tony Khan was asked about WWE Counterprogramming. This is according to WFAA. He stated this, and I quote, "Well, I think we're going to put on a great event, and we have to focus on putting the best event that we can with the best wrestlers in the world. So that's a lot of fun. So we're going to have a great show next Saturday afternoon. We're very focused on what AEW is doing and the AEW fans, and I think that's served us really well." That is the best possible answer that Tony Khan could give. Clearly, Tony Khan has learned through his mistakes. You love to see it. The best way to respond to WWE with their counter-programming is to just put on the best show that you possibly can. You let the action on the pay-per-view do the talking for you. And as a promoter, that is what you need to do. Not to mention, he was asked that same question at the Double or Nothing media scrum, and he stated that it was the most consistent that he has seen WWE counter-programming since Jim Crockett Promotions. You know what's crazy? I love how he states Jim Crockett Promotions and not WCW. Jim Crockett Promotions is essentially the precursor to WCW. That was when Jim Crockett Jr. owned the company until he sold it to Ted Turner in 1988, changing the name from Jim Crockett Promotions to the name of their show, which was World Championship Wrestling. But I know a lot of people tend to compare AEW to WCW, and that is very true. But if you really want to think about it, AEW is a more modernized version of Jim Crockett Promotions because the similarities are right there. Tony Khan is very similar to Jim Crockett Jr., considering Jim Crockett Jr. was a fan of wrestling, Tony Khan was a fan of wrestling. Not to mention they were aired on the TBS network, just like Jim Crockett Promotions was. And Jim Crockett Promotions also focused on the in-ring aspect of wrestling. AEW also focuses on the in-ring aspect of wrestling. Look, I'm going to say this right here and right now. AEW is more Jim Crockett Promotions than it is WCW. Even though they're technically the same thing, Jim Crockett Promotions as a product was very different than WCW as a product in the late 90s. But yeah, Tony Khan is acting way more professional than he normally is. Now, in terms of the ticket sales for All In, the current setup for All In Texas is 23,740 according to WrestleTix. The capacity of Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas is roughly around 40,000. The fact that they didn't aim for the 40,000 to me speaks volumes about the current state of AEW. But I will say this, in the first few months, they did struggle to sell a couple of tickets. They stayed at the 10,000 mark for a couple of weeks. But as of 15 hours ago, they've currently distributed 20,489 tickets. And I guarantee you by bell time, they're going to reach the 25,000 mark. This show is on the verge of beating their all-time record here in the United States with the first Grand Slam, which took place all the way back in 2021. Now, you can say that as a statistic for 2025 AEW to be better than 2021 AEW, but that's where you're wrong. Because let's be real with ourselves, if AEW announced All In Texas back in 2021, this show would have been an immediate sellout. because people need to understand, coming out of the pandemic, AEW was on fire, not only from a product standpoint, but from a perception standpoint. We still lived during the Vince McMahon era. It wasn't until the next year where Vince McMahon stepped down. AEW was essentially kicking their ass. It got so embarrassing to the point where AEW actually outsold WWE at the UBS Arena back in 2021. Nowadays, WWE is selling out everywhere considering the product is hot. From the moment Triple H took the book, that was where all the cracks started to show with AEW. There's also a lot of discourse about the ratings. Now, from observing the ratings, and look, I hate talking about the ratings, considering a lot of people are pure hypocrites about the ratings. You got a lot of content creators say that they don't care about the ratings, but from the moment a low rating comes out, they end up tweeting about the ratings anyway. I'm gonna just say this right here and right now. The ratings for AEW Dynamite back in 2021 was way higher than it is now. Nowadays, AEW's viewership tends to range around the 600,000, 700,000 mark. I believe this week they reached around the 500,000 mark, which is not good. But back in 2021, they consistently averaged around 1 million viewers every week. Some weeks it'd be around 800,000, some weeks it'd be around 900,000. But AEW, again, was on fire. And the crazy thing about the discourse is that Tony Khan even put out a chart about the most recent quarters for AEW and how AEW is up. Which, honestly, I don't know if I'm supposed to take that seriously. I mean, Tony Khan is the numbers guy, so he probably knows more than me. And not only that, he is the owner. But, I mean, you don't really have to do that, especially when you're going through a down period. But that is just me. But even though AEW is going through a down period now, everybody talks about ratings, right? Everybody talks about ratings, but also people need to understand that AEW still does traditional pay-per-view. You have to pay $50 for all of their events. And the crazy thing is that everybody talks about ratings, but nobody talks about pay-per-view buy rates. Nobody talks about pay-per-view buy rates for WWE, considering all the pay-per-views are on Peacock. Or I'm sorry, PLEs. But AEW, you still have to pay $50. And buy rates are an essential part of their business as well. It's not their main source of income. Their main source of income is from WBD, but their pay-per-view buy rates are still relatively important. And if you look at the recent pay-per-view buy rates for even last year, they're still consistent. They still average around 120,000 buys per show, which is not bad. Because think about this. A lot of people consider 2024 to be the lowest point of AEW in their entire existence, right? But think about this. AEW at their lowest point, that being 2024, would consistently draw around 150,000 pay-per-view buys. Their buy rates would consistently range around the 100,000 mark. Well over the 100,000 mark. All In last year drew 180,000 buys. If you really think about it, almost beat their 201,000 pay-per-view buy rate from All Out 2021. Now, if you compare the buy rates for AEW in 2024 and you compare it to WCW's buy rates in 2000, which was their lowest point, dude, it's like night and day. Especially in the later months into 2000 for WCW. Bro, don't even get me started. Everybody talks about the ratings, but nobody talks about the pay-per-view buy rates. AEW still draws consistently in terms of their pay-per-views. It's crazy how nobody's talking about this. We need less people talking about the ratings and more people talking about the buy rates. Now, as a product, is AEW the best that they have been? No. Again, their creative peak was all the way back in 2021. Early 2022, they were still relatively strong. 2023 had some bright spots. Yeah, we had the Hangman Page John Moxley feud. Yeah, we did have MJF versus Bryan Danielson. We had a lot of great things in 2023. But in terms of Dynamite as a show, it started to go downhill. Don't even get me started with 2024. Of course, we had the takeover with the Elite, which was god-awful. And we had the Death Riders, which are still going on to this day. Some people may say that they've improved a little bit, but again, I've always stated this. It's not the group, it's the creative approach. AEW from a creative standpoint is still relatively struggling. But I will say this. Even though AEW in 2025 is not better than AEW in 2021, they are 100 times better than what they were a year ago. If there's any word that I can describe AEW in 2025, it is the word rebuild. AEW right now is in the process of a rebuilding phase. Momentum always shifts. AEW had momentum from the start, and their momentum died off around 2022. WWE, once Triple H took the book, their momentum just skyrocketed, and they're still having that momentum to this day. And it's been almost 3 years at this point. But I'm the type of person that genuinely believes momentum always shifts. WWE's momentum is not gonna last forever, guys. It's eventually gonna die down. And some people are even starting to create the argument that the cracks are starting to show, which you can say that, but we're not at that spot yet. AEW is in their rebuilding phase. And I'm gonna say this right here and right now, even though they're taking the proper steps to rebuild, it's gonna take a while for them. But I will say, them going to smaller venues was a smart move. I know a lot of people crapped on AEW for that, but if you are a promotion and you're running big big venues and you're not drawing, you got a problem. AEW moving their weekly television to smaller venues was the right call because it gave them the realization that, hey, we're not hot anymore, we got to rebuild. And I feel like AEW from a quality standpoint has improved drastically with them moving to smaller venues. And the crazy thing is that you had a lot of TNA fans talk shit about AEW moving to smaller venues and TNA moving to larger venues. But I have to ask all you TNA fans this. How are those ticket sales for Slammiversary? Cause they ain't looking good. The capacity for the UBS Arena is 17,000. AEW ran Forbidden Door at that same venue and drew over 11,000 fans. TNA had tickets on sale for that show for months, and they're still at the 2,000 mark. What does that say for y'all? Now, I wish all TNA the best, and not to mention, I'm planning on going to Slammiversary. But I'm just saying, y'all be talking shit. I had to call your asses out for that. But yeah, I feel like from a product standpoint, AEW still isn't where they need to be. But I feel like they are taking the proper steps to try to improve their product. I genuinely believe that even though they're focused a lot on the in-ring aspect of the show, they're also taking a proper step to focus a lot on storytelling as well. But storytelling that is actually good. I'm digging the Hurt Syndicate MJF storyline, and I'm also digging the dynamic between Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland, and Will Ospreay in terms of the Death Riders. Yes, the Death Rider storyline has been kind of a flop, but it's been working. But in no way, shape, or form, AEW in 2025 is better than AEW at their peak, which was 2021. You had CM Punk, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson all make their debuts at the same time. Nobody in their mother will ever top that. I'm sorry. But AEW is right now in a rebuilding phase, and you cannot fault them for that. But yeah, that was my video on AEW. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Push that bell for notifications. That means look out for more videos right here on the Wrestle Havoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the Virgin Referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace.